making the world a better place is definitely a driving factor. We don't want to just come and have a great time and get to, be in the middle of a bunch of networking.
Right.
We are definitely driven toward finding innovative solutions to a variety of different problems that exist out there.
Okay.
The very core initial thrust of it was people have a certain perspective of creativity outside of those that are creative, that it's just a luxury item, or it's, nice to have. Why don't you get a real job? But when you look around you and you see that everything that we're wearing and driving in and living in and everything that we touch and feel on a daily basis is designed by someone that was creative, and that there's creativity in commerce everywhere we look, and in fact is America's export, America's number one export. And the idea that really creativity drives innovation. It's not just about the arts, it's about new solutions. And so the next step is to really start driving those new solutions in various formats. And we have a pretty long brainstorm list of things that we're going to start creating action items around, and how Asheville and Bozeman can continue the networking, not only in person but online, virtually, between the festivals and beyond.
Well, this Skype conversation sounds like a good a good start, at least from our direction. So Asheville, I know that Bozeman, it's your home, and it's someplace you feel is really special. And obviously it's apples and oranges, Asheville and Bozeman, but they have something in common that makes them hosts for Hatch. And can you parse out maybe what that is? What is it about this town that makes it Hatch-worthy?
Well, there is a certain magic that happens in both communities, and I think, I've often joked that it would be harder for us to get some of these huge industry leaders to come from Burbank down to the Santa Monica Pier than it would to get them to Asheville or Bozeman, because there's a intrigue factor there, and it also, once you're there and you're experiencing it, there is a certain intimacy that is created, and you are able to shed the skin of the city that you left behind for a few days, and it really breaks people down into being real and authentic, and letting the walls dissipate and the bridges build. And I think that the communities they play a big part in the character of building those experiences, because there's not a whole lot of hustle and bustle around. It really truly boils down to the simple connectivity, and that's what these two communities really foster.
Yeah, I noticed that about the festival as well, is like, despite the fact that these are people at the very top of their game, there wasn't really a whole lot of pretense. There weren't I didn't know anybody that was a diva, anybody that really felt like, oh, well, look at me. It seemed like the pretense of Hatch is almost this collaborative, very familial atmosphere. Is that something you?
Yeah, you bet. And family and familial are two great explanations for it. And what I really love seeing is these people that are at the top of their game in the industry being impressed with each other, and also the youth that's surrounding Hatch, the groundbreakers, and in the various different formats of film, music, design, architecture, fashion. They leave feeling as impressed as the groundbreakers do. And we're all big fans of places like Sundance and TED Conference, but there is a different vibe and energy there in terms of TED. You get to see global leaders and thinkers up on stage, and then they walk out the back, and you never really get to talk to them or interact with them. And we really wanted to strip that model down from from day one of Hatch, and create an environment in which every idea is worthy, and you never know when you're sitting next to the next Buckminster Fuller or Da Vinci. It could be any of us, any of the people that are invited. It could be the kid that I met outside of the art gallery there, who's 13 years old. He had a whole pocket full of business cards, and he works with the Moog Foundation. He was networking. That kid's going to be something special. You could just tell.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, Summit is his name, and he's definitely an up-and-comer for sure.
Yeah,
a hatchling, if you will.
Yeah, amen.
No doubt. Well, just one last question about the future of Hatch, but just as far as like the scope and scale of like, what kind of impact do you see Hatch having, 5-10 years down the line?
It's obviously, there's the dream factor. It's hard to quantify precisely.
Sure.
but we do want to have an international presence. I mean, we already do virtually on the web. You know, we're visited by 154 countries every year. We have flown kids in from Singapore and Uzbekistan and Australia and Israel, you name it. They've come from all over the place.
Nice. And
the international flavor of that really rings true, especially online. And our first focus, our next step really is building that online community. We have a lot of amazing assets, and those assets are people and our work. And in the same way that Craigslist is able to connect people through job opportunities, Hatch is doing it in a much more organic way. We want to start really facilitating and catalyzing that through online community building and a series of other different technologies that we're implementing that allow people to, you know, what's really interesting about film is that it breaks down into these spokes of every single industry you can think of. It's like it includes music and design and art, fashion, and you know, all these spokes are brought together into that one medium called film, which is an amalgamation of so many mediums. So, you know, we have someone just recently, Liz White, who met someone at Hatch, and now she's working on a film. Yeah. And that just happened in the last few days, and that kind of crossover is priceless for us. Yeah. You know, and I was talking back briefly to a sponsor 4 years ago. A sponsor's wife pulled me out into the backyard, and she said, "What are the metrics of Hatch?" And I said, how do you mean metrics exactly? And she said, well, I know that when I put $100 toward a village in Africa, I'm feeding, you know, 50 kids. And I said, oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so I started counting, like, you know, the attendance to the panels and the attendance to, you know, the film screenings, the concerts, but then I was like, wait, hold on a second. How many people have fallen in love listening to a piece of music, and that becomes their piece of music? How many people have seen a film by Steven Spielberg? How many people have been, you know, how many painters are inspired by an architect inspired by a photographer, and a photographer inspired by a filmmaker? Essentially, if Hatch is able to be the jumping off point or connect the dots between two different energies that then manifest into making the next Da Vinci or Einstein or Jackson Browne or Joan Baez, then the inspiration of one essentially affects the lives of millions. Nice. And so sometimes it's not about numbers, but it's about those unique individual experiences that then can go inspire millions of people. Right.
So the metric is one.
The metric is one. The metric is also infinite.
Oh. Right.
So it's unquantifiable, and the metrics of one equal the metrics of millions.
I like it. It's got a nice ring to it.
Fantastic, Graham. Hey, I just want to give a big thank you to the Hatch Asheville volunteers that work so hard and so passionately, and the board in Asheville. We really want to try to see more of the city of Asheville there next year, and I know that's, you know, Hatch is not always the easiest thing to explain or understand. A series of, you know, panels and workshops, and, you know, at first glance it just doesn't really fit into a very distinct business model. Sure. So the idea that, you know, Variable TV and yourself and are out there spreading the word and educating people about the true potency of it, and that it's really here to serve, is going to be very useful for everyone, because the more they participate, the more that's able to take advantage of the opportunities, these, you know, essentially almost everything for free except for like maybe a $6 movie here and there. Right. And really, we just want to engage with the communities and build a bridge between these communities and go forward and make a difference in the world. So thank you for your help, and thank you to the volunteers there.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to spread the word, and I think everyone who checks out our show online and is going to hear the same thing. So much appreciated, Yarrow.
Cool.
Hey,
right on.
Good afternoon.
Keep up the good work, Graham.
Count on it, man.
Thanks
I'll be in touch soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Sounds good.
Later.